Do you guys have the problem when climbing into your car that you have to twist your leg underneath the steering wheel like this, and then once you get in, your legs are resting against your steering wheel? Well, I think we can fix that with a tilt steering column. What's up guys, my name is Andy. In this video, I'm going to be replacing the stock steering column on my 66 Mustang with a tilt column from Ididit. I was researching what I wanted to do for this steering column, and I didn't know if maybe, I looked into actually a smaller steering wheel just to get out of the way of my legs and stuff like that, but the smaller steering, that's a 15-inch steering wheel. I like that size. The 14s almost look a little too small. So I thought, well, I can't do that. What other options are there? I could maybe retrofit a tilt column from a later year Mustang. And going online and looking around, I came down to Ididit, and this seemed to be the best fit for my car, and partially because it's almost, well, one of the reasons, it's the easiest. I mean, the wiring harness is ready to go. Everything fits. It looks like a column that comes in these cars. And then, you know, full disclosure, when I talked to these guys, I explained who I was and what I wanted to do, and they did give me a discount on this, but I did have to pay for it. And full disclosure, I would have paid for it anyways, because this is the one that I wanted. And you can, what's great about them is not only the parts made in the USA, so we like that, but they've got lots of different styles. So whether you've got a floor shift or a column shift, whether you've got painted or non-painted, there's the GM version and the Ford version. There's lots of different, in fact, there's, depending if you have the rack and pinion steering in these cars, if you had put that in, you could buy a rack or a tilt column that's just for that versus the regular base steering that I have in this car. I ordered the wrong one. This is my fault. When I was looking on their website, I actually gave them, when I ordered this, the part number for the rack and steering version, not what they call the base version. And the difference is that this is actually 1 inch shorter. So when I modify this steering shaft on here, I just need to make it a little bit longer. But we'll go over that in a minute. So that's my fault. I wasn't paying attention. I told them what I wanted. They shipped me what I wanted. So that's good. But when if you guys order something like this, just pay attention that there is one for rack steering versus the base. And the rack steering version, it's shorter, so that gives you a better angle for your U-joints and stuff like that, so you don't bind things up. This will still work, no problems there. Everything else is gonna be fine. I just need to note that when I'm modifying my steering shaft to make this work, so we're gonna be okay. So what I wanna do, let's go through the box real quick and take a look at what they sent in the box, and then what you need to get this done, and then we're gonna dig right into it. All right, so what we have here, okay, so we'll go over this in a second. So here's the steering column, and oh, this is packaged pretty good. I like that. So what's nice about this is set up to go with the Ford wiring harness inside the car. So we're good there. The GM version will still work if you were to order that, but you'd have to do a little bit extra with the wiring, but it'll still work. And then everything here, another great thing about this setup here is that this will work with the hub that I have in my car. Whether you have a stock hub or an aftermarket hub, I've got those canceling pins that go in here that cancel the turn signal, and then where the horn contacts are, everything's gonna work perfect. I mean, if you were to look at my steering column on my car, it would look just like this if I were to pull the hub off. So that's fantastic. I know that I don't have to worry about anything. And then, so we're gonna be good with that. That's fantastic. I like that. And then on this end, so what we've got here is a 36 spline, 3/4 inch shaft. And what you need to make this to mate up to your stock shaft is a coupler. And I've got a Borgeson coupler here. There's lots of different brands out there. I recommend this one. This is gonna be good for what we need. It's beefy. It's not gonna, when we put the shaft in here, it's not gonna slip inside there or anything like that. So there's also, you can buy like a U-joint style if you need that, but this will be sufficient for what we're doing. So on one end, we've got the 36 spline that will slide right over that, and then the other side's got the double D for the shaft on the steering column. We're gonna have to modify our shaft to work with that, but we'll go over that when we get there. And then inside the bag here, we've got instructions on how to install this. This is the floor mount that's going to mount on the Firewall. It's going to grab the bottom of the steering column, and what's great is that these holes are positioned, and even this shape is everything that matches what's already in the car. So we'll just take everything out and put this in its place, and it'll be just like it came from the factory. Here is the tilt and the blinker shafts for the column. Sticker. And then there's a couple different ways you can do it. So we need these connectors to put on the end of these wires, and you can either utilize these plugs and you'll de-pin the plugs in the car so that you can just make these match, or we can set this up to utilize the plug that's in the car. But we'll take a look at that when we get there. We may just go with these because it might be simpler to just stick with that stuff. So that's what you guys need. Other than some basic tools to do this done, these are the parts that you're gonna need to make this happen. So let's start taking the car apart, and we'll show you what we need to do to get this done. First thing we should do is disconnect the battery so we don't short anything out while we're working on the electronics. So I should point out before we remove this, you're gonna want your steering wheel, or actually really your wheels, as straight as possible. And I'll show that later when we get the steering box out. My steering wheel happens to be straight with the wheels, so we're good there. But it makes it easier if you have that straight. Now, if you have an aftermarket wheel like this, you'll need to go ahead and remove all these fasteners to get the steering wheel off. If you have the stock steering wheel, the horn button, usually you just push in and you can twist it and it'll come off. Depending on what kind of wheel hub you have, it might be a little bit different, but you guys are probably already familiar with how to remove that. All right, the last one of those. And then this will just come right off. And then the horn button, just unplug this. Now we're going to utilize all this whole hub on the new setup, but just for here we got to take it all apart. And this is a 15/16 nut on here, and then your steering wheel or the hub may be on there pretty securely. There, just a couple of light taps, break that free. And I don't think we need to remove this from the steering column, but I'm going to take it off anyways. And then if you guys have a column mounted tack like I have here, you're going to have to loosen this up, and we're going to slide this off when we get this out of the way. We'll just leave that on there for now. Now the next step is to go down below, and we're going to take, there's two nuts holding this mount to the bottom of the dash. We're going to want to undo those and then unplug the harness from the car for the blinker system and the horn system. So here underneath the dash, here is this bracket that's holding the steering column to the dash. We need to remove these two 1/2 inch, we use a 1/2 inch socket to get these nuts off of here. And you'll want to save these nuts and this bracket because we're going to utilize this when we put the new column in. Then you want to find the harness coming out of the bottom of the steering column, and we're just going to unplug. There's two connectors here. There's a 2-wire and a 6-wire connector that we want to disassemble or take apart from the car. Just like that. Now we can slide the steering column out of the car. And then just go ahead and just slide this off of the steering shaft. All right. And while we're here, we're going to go ahead and take this plate off of the Firewall. You're going to want to hold on to these fasteners because you're going to need those when you put the new parts in that came with the steering column. Okay, this can come off, but we don't need to keep this piece because we got a new pieces that came with the kit. All right, guys, before we get in there and take that steering box out, I got to get the headers out of the way, and then we need to disconnect the steering linkage from the steering box underneath the car. So we'll go ahead and get this moved up, we'll get the car jacked up, and get everything disconnected from underneath, then we can pull that steering box out. All right, last bolt. Man, taking those header bolts out is a real pain. All right, so let's go ahead and jack the car up and get the rest of the header out of here. All right, now that we got that out of the way, the next thing we're going to want to go after is the Pitman Arm and getting this nut off of here and pulling this Pitman Arm off of the steering box. This is probably one of the two hardest things in this whole swap, this whole build, whatever you want to call it, because for some of you guys, this is going to be stuck on there really, really good. I recommend, getting a puller. Well, I've got a Pitman puller that we can use, but you may have to apply some heat to this thing to get things to kind of loosen up. So let's go after that, get this off of there, and then we can finish unbolting the steering box and getting it out of the car. We're going to use a 1 1/8 inch socket to get this nut off of there. Oh, well, that was really easy to get that off. Hopefully that's a good sign. This is going to be easy to pull off. So this is that puller that we're going to use. So that wasn't so bad. Again, just applying a little bit of heat, and you notice that if I just let the torch sit there for a little bit, a lot longer than it's shown on the camera, but just get this thing nice and warm, and then I put that impact gun back on there, and it was able to just pull it right off, and it made it really easy. So applying some heat makes it a lot easier. One thing I should point out before we get a little bit farther, you see how there's just kind of this fat, this key, or almost this keyed part on the shaft here. You got all the splines and the fat spot. That's facing forward on the car. What we want to do, we don't want to mess with the steering alignment in the box. It'll make it easier when we go to put everything back together. If we put it back the way it was, we don't have to worry about the steering being radically different. Now, you really do need to take this car in and get an alignment done after you do this. But to get there, we don't have to worry about the car being radically off from where we were at. So just pay attention to where this wider spline is. And then it doesn't hurt to maybe get like a marker pen or something like that, and maybe make a mark relative from the spline to the body housing of there, so you know that if you take this apart and you're doing something with it, that you can put it back to where it was, and we know that that's the center. All right, so let's get these 3 bolts out of here. They're 5/8 inch sockets on the other side of this frame here. We'll get those off, and then we can pull the steering housing out. All right, so these are the 5/8 inch bolts that we gotta take out of the steering box. I don't know why there's so many, washers on this one. I don't know if that was something that was supposed to be like that, or the previous owner didn't know. These bolts actually look fairly new, so anyways, you probably don't have that problem. Now we need to get the steering box out of the car, and this is where you guys might not like what I'm going to do. What you can do is remove the master cylinder, you remove a valve cover, and if you take out the bolt off the motor mount, you can lift the motor up a little bit, and you'll be able to pull it out through this area right here. You don't have to take the export brace or the Monte Carlo bar off if you have one. You should be able to fish it through here. However, I don't want to go through all those steps to take all that stuff off, and we're going to be cutting the shaft, the steering shaft anyways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just cut it, so I don't have to mess with all this stuff, and then I can just pull this out from the bottom. I am going to cut it so that it's longer than I need it to be, so that we can cut it to the right length when we get it out of the car. But I am going to cut it while it's in the car. This is going to work for what I need to do, so I'm going to get it cut. Right now we could just, yeah, look at that. That was easy. Now the shaft that we're going to need is, we're going to need about like this much, so that's okay that we cut it off there. All right, guys, so here's the steering shaft, and this part here is garbage. We don't need that anymore. We're not going to use that anymore. In fact, we're going to cut this thing off somewhere in here, so all that end is garbage too. I did want to point out, I did take a white marker there and just mark. Remember I was talking about that thick spline piece? There's actually a couple of them on here. I went ahead and marked that one and put a little mark on the housing here, so in case I accidentally spin this or whatever, I can get it back to where it was, and then at least we know that the steering is mostly straight, and then I can go and get alignment afterwards. Okay, so now what we want to do is, this is where we're going to use the instructions to exactly what they say. This is where it gets a little critical. In this picture here, you can see that they want you to measure from the face of the nut out 4 inches, and that's where you cut it off. And that's going to be this nut right here, not this piece here. That bushing or sleeve or whatever. You can actually kind of see it here in the picture, that black part. We want to measure from this surface out 4 inches, and that's where we're going to cut it off. Now this is where most of you guys are going to need to cut, because you're going to buy the right steering column, not the one that I bought. Remember, I bought the one that was for the rack and pinion steering, which the steering column is actually an inch shorter, the piece that's going to come down to here. So I'm actually going to cut this at 5 inches. Again, this is only for me. You guys, we're going to need to cut it at 4 inches because you're going to buy the right steering column for your car. So we're going to go ahead and measure it out, mark that off, and then after we get that cut off, this template right here is what they want you to use for cutting the double D that's going to look like this shape. You know, we're going to go from this 3/4 inch round shaft to this double D shape. And the downside with this, and I really wish that Ididit would fix this, is that this is not to scale. So I can't cut this out and wrap it around the pole here and you know, the shaft and use it. I actually have to make my own. And these go out 3 decimal places. I don't know if you have to be that exact, but really, you know, making my own, I'd rather just have one that maybe tore out of the instruction book, then I can wrap around here, mark it, and away we go. I imagine that they do that so that they don't have the liability if you cut it out and do it wrong, that, hey, you said to use the template and you didn't work. Well, if you make your own template, then it's on you. So that's probably the safe thing for them. So what we're going to do, let's go ahead and get this cut to length first. Then I'm going to go ahead and start marking this up for that double D shape that we need to cut. And I'm just going to use a grinder and just grind 2 flat spots, you know, one on this edge and one on the bottom edge here. And then what we can do is use the coupler that we have to buy. And see, it's got that double D shape already in there. And I'll just use that as a, you know, kind of a gauge to make sure that the right shape I've got. And then if I grind a little more, I can slide on there. And once I'm good, then we can, you know, basically get ready to put this back in the car. So let's get started. So I went ahead and made my own little template based off of what they had in their instructions. See, it's almost the same size, but you cannot use the one in the book. So what we want to do is we want to wrap this around the shaft, and you want these 2 ends of the paper to meet. And then what we're going to do is we're going to score on the metal the lines here in the shaded area. And I'm going to have to twist around and go to this side. And make sure you mark this end as well. You want this to be, oh, maybe that far from just enough so you can make a mark on the end of the shaft here. So we'll just tape this on, mark it up, pull this off, and then we'll have our little score marks so we know where we need to cut that D. And what I'm doing here is I'm just drawing a line on the face of this so I can kind of see, you know, from this end of the shaft where that double D shape is. You can kind of see here on the end. I did do a little too thick on that end, but you can kind of see that when we're done here, if the black was gone, that would be the shape of that double D. But this is accidentally a little too thick, but I'll fix that. So now we can take this off and start grinding away this part, this shaded area, and grind it all the way back to this 1 inch line. Do the same thing on this side and make that double D. And you do want to be careful, you don't cut, I think I might have cut too much on this side, so I cut a little bit less on this side so I can sneak up on it. This is, you know, if you could take this to a machine shop, you're probably better off. However, this is working. I just need to cut a little bit more off of this side, and then this should be able to fit on there. It's like I'm getting it down to around there, which means I need to cut a little bit more down below. Aha! All right. Good deal. That's what we want, and that's a good snug fit, and when we tighten these down, that'll help keep everything in place, so very cool. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to take these little set screws out, and I'm going to mark on the shaft where these are, and so I can drill just the smallest little hole to give a place for these things to bite into on this side and on this side of the shaft. And then we can see the 2 dots there. We'll mark the center of that. And the shaft is still warm, so careful with that. And what we're just creating there is just a place for this set screw to just kind of set in. I know we got the double D shape, but this will just help. Slide this back on, and then we could put these guys in here. There. See, the nice thing about that is now, look, that guy doesn't come off. That's good. And then, of course, it's obviously on there because of the double D. So, fantastic. All right, guys, that's it as far as the, you know, I said one of the hard parts was getting that nut off of the Pitman arm and getting that separated. I think the other hard part of this whole project is getting this double D shaft, you know, cut into it and making sure that it's right and that you didn't overcut it. And so this is not, it's a little sloppy, but it'll get the job done, and that's what we need. So from here, we can go ahead and put the steering box back in the car, and then we can put the steering column in the car. And actually what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna mount this on the steering column first and then slide it onto this as we slide it into the car. So let's get this put back in the car. So we can go ahead and put this up inside the car for now, and we can put the bolts in and hold it in place. We got some stuff to do inside the car still and stuff with the shaft or the steering column, but I think for this part we can go ahead and get this put in and then get those bolts back in here. All right, that's in place. This is still lined up. We still got the white mark on here, so that's good. In fact, we could probably go ahead and put all this back together because what we're going to be doing up there doesn't need to worry about this. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. All right, guys, now that's back on. It did take a little bit of finagling. I did have to, you know, I put that coupler piece on the shaft so I can grab a hold of it and twist it just a little bit to make it make the splines line up with this Pitman arm. You may find taking this Pitman arm off of the drag link here might be what you need to do. I was able to get it to work, but now I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna spin this coupler here back the other way to line up there we go. Now those white lines are lined up from where it was before. So again, the car is mostly straight, which is what we want. So from here, we're done down here. We can, in fact, you could, if you needed to, you could put everything back together that you have down here, and we can go up top and we can drop the car, and everything else is done up top. All right, I got everything buttoned up down there. I went ahead and I just saved you the horror of watching me struggle to put this header back on and hook everything back up, but we all got it on there. So what we want to do now is let's go over to the bench, and we got to take a look at the piece that's going to go in the firewall that's going to secure the bottom of the steering column. Go ahead and we can cut this open and get this out of here. And what we've got, this is a gasket piece. We can get all those holes out. Okay, that's going to go in the firewall, and then you've got, this is going to, your steering shaft is actually going to probably sit, I think, what is it, this way? And then we want to get this out of there, and this is going to clamp and hold that bottom of that steering shaft in place. Now we're going to have to open these up a little bit here so that it'll fit inside there. But the screws that we saved from the firewall, we want to save that. And the nice thing, like I was saying before, this only goes one way, so you don't have to worry about it getting spun around. So we're going to need that. Let's go put that in the firewall. All right, now we're going to put this up here, and I wanted to show real quick that there's only one way this goes. See how all holes are lining up there. If you spin this around, the holes don't line up. So if you imagine that this thing kind of points towards the passenger side, that's probably the best way to describe it, but you'll find that it only goes one way. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that up there. We'll throw in our first screw, just to hold everything in place. We can go back and tighten it up in a second. And the last screw. There. All right, that's in place. And now we need to start talking about the wiring. So what I've got here is the new tilt steering column that we're putting in. This is the old factory unit that we took out. And one thing that I want to point out that Ididit does really well is they color-coded these wires the same colors and of the factory wires, and you can, it's almost plug and play. It's that simple. These come with the terminals already on there, and these were covered earlier in the video. You couldn't see that, but they're already on there, so I didn't have to do anything with that. And then you still have some extras in here if you need it. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to de-pin the wires from the old factory harness here and plug these into this plastic piece. In the instructions, they go through and they list what each wire is and what it does and what color it is. And fantastic about this is that it's the same colors. In my I did a previous video where I had to replace the wiring harness, actually this wiring harness on my steering column. And at the end there are these plugs. And if you look at it, I guess you'd be looking at it this way, because this little tab right here, looking at it that way, that was meant to match it this way. So we've got this white with a blue stripe, the yellow wire, all the way through here, and then this separate one, same thing with this little ridge or tab on here. If you look at it that way, like you're going to plug them in there, we've got the orange with the blue stripe and the green with the orange stripe. These are all the same wires that we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start, if I take out one at a time, and I can start plugging in the wires that we have. We just plug in here. There we go, just like that. And you may have to bend the tabs on the ends of the terminals here to pull that wire out. And this is the green wire with the orange stripe, so we got to find that guy. There. Now that's good to go, and I can go ahead and plug that back in the car. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with this other piece, and this will be ready to go. There, all these wires are now in there. I can just go ahead and just plug this right in the car, right the way that it was before, and we're good to go. I probably should have taken this off. This would be nice to have. It just protects the wires from getting chewed up, although we do have this grommet on here. Maybe I'm just gonna run some electrical tape on here just to clean this up. But now let's see, the next part we wanna do is we wanna put this with a 36 spline here on the end of this shaft, and see how there's this divot here, or this channel. What we want to do is slide this on here until we can get this set screw to ride in that channel. There we go. We just go ahead and tighten this down. There, now that's not coming off. All right, I think we can go ahead and put this in the car. I do want to point out this right here, this channel is the same that's on here, although this is a little bit longer, it gives you a little more play. The bracket, that U bracket that goes underneath here that bolts the bottom of this underneath the dash, there's a tab on that. And you're gonna wanna put that tab inside here, and that keeps this position, this thing clocked so that it won't spin on you underneath the dash. And then also, when you put that U bracket on here, there's the tab, you want it to be towards the firewall. So you wanna be on this end when you're putting that on there. All right, let's get going. All right, this is one of those things where if you had an extra set of hands, it'd probably be helpful. Also, if you align the coupler up with the shaft, before you put this in there, it might make it a little bit easier, but you will be able to kind of fish it in there and figure out right where it is, and you can slide it on there. There, you kind of feel it going on now. See, it holds itself because it is on that shaft. And this is that bracket that I was talking about. So this is the tab that needs to align with this slot. Don't forget to put this rubber pad in the bottom that came off there when you were taking it off earlier. And there's these two spacers that go, you know, on these studs underneath the dash. So you're gonna have to hold them in place and put this on. It's going to be a little bit of work. And don't forget the little washers that go underneath these studs before you put the nut on. All right, now I'll go ahead and plug these harnesses in. And the nice thing is these are designed to only go one way. So you can't have it backwards, which is fantastic. And then this one goes this way. There, everything's in there. We just do the old poor man's tuck up underneath. All right, that looks good. We need to tighten this down that holds the bottom of the steering column. What we're gonna use is a 7/16 socket. And by tightening this down, it'll just pinch those two tabs on either side and hold this in place. There. Now let's go out and tighten up the set screws on the coupler. All right, I had a hard time finding a place for the camera when I was tightening these, so I just went ahead and tightened them. So those are locked down, ready to go. Now let's go back inside the car and finish the steering column. So now we got to put in the lever for the tilt mechanism. And then the lever for the blinker. Oh yeah, nice. And then, oh, look at that. Oh, we're on our way. Okay, so we need to put the steering wheel hub, and then we'll be done. So now we can put the rest of this together. And you do need to pay attention. There's supposed to be two here. Looks like I busted. Yeah, here it is. It busted off. That's unfortunate. I'm gonna have to get, you just can't pop these out. Might have to get a whole new hub, but anyways, I still have one. So you wanna make sure that these are gonna be on the left-hand side in between your return for your blinker here. And if you have this style of hub, you should have something with those on there. And then we just go ahead and line this up. And I remember that I had a fastener that was on the top center, so kind of gives me an idea of where I need to be for that. And then put the included nut back on here. And we can tighten this down. There we go. And we need the horn button. And on this horn, it doesn't matter which terminal goes to what, so you just need to plug them on there. There we go. Trim ring. And we got to put all 9 of these fasteners in there. All right, that's in place. Guys, this looks fantastic. You know, I'm already noticing just a little bit that's not quite touching my legs like it was before, and I think that's because this system might be out just a smidge farther, which is fine. I'm okay with that. And then, oh, look at that. Now, obviously I don't need to drive like that, but if I do need to get, you know, ingress and egress, oh, that's gonna be so much better. Gosh, you guys, this is definitely worth it. I like that a lot. And this is an 8-position tilt, so there's a lot to pick from when you're trying to find that perfect spot. Yeah, right there. Much better. All right, guys, that's it. That is a tilt steering column in a 65, 66 Mustang. You know, this took the better part of a day. So, you know, this weekend was, you know, I had the free day, so that worked out pretty good. You might want to break it up over 2 days because there's a lot of stuff, you know, with removing that steering box and the headers and all that kind of stuff may take you a little bit longer. But definitely get done in a weekend. And then I did want to point out too that the tachometer, mine was a column mounted one. Because of that tilt mechanism, it's thicker and it takes up more space between the steering wheel hub and the dash. And so that tack that I had can't quite fit in there. I'm gonna have to figure something else with that. Just a heads up to you guys, if you do have a column mounted tack, you might have to find a new place for it. I actually would like to do whole new gauges. I know there's a the 5 gauges that you have on the stock 66 instrument cluster, you can do 6 gauges and they can all fit in there. So I'd like to do that down the road, but we'll get there when we do. So that's it, guys. I was real happy with this install. Really, I mean, I had more problems with the parts on my car than the Ididit parts. I mean, you saw how easy it was to plug the harness in. Everything, you know, the whole steering setup just fits right in the car. I do like that. I didn't have to modify the car to make it work. Now the steering, you know, shaft notwithstanding, but I'm looking at it now. I mean, it looks like it's supposed to look. Everything fits in there. I'm happy with it. So guys, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up, and if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out, and we'll see you in the next one.